Before you close your eyes tonight, remember, the world's scariest stories aren't found in movies. They're hidden in police reports and whispered about in small towns that don't appear on any map. If you love real horror, the kind that could happen, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a story that'll keep you awake just a little longer. Now, let's begin tonight's story. In late September of 2003, a volunteer search and rescue unit went missing in the Alaska wilderness. They weren't rookies, they weren't underprepared, and to this day, no one, not the state troopers, not the Park Service, not even the families, can explain what they found out there, or why their radios never went silent. The story begins with a missing hiker, a man named Daniel Holt, 33 years old, an outdoor guide from Anchorage. He'd set off on a solo backpacking trip through a section of Denali National Park, a stretch called the Black Spruce Corridor. It's rugged country, no marked trails, no cell signal, just endless pine and cold wind rolling down from the mountains. Daniel was supposed to be gone 3 days. He never came back. By the fourth day, his sister filed a missing persons report. By the fifth, the park rangers found his abandoned truck at a service road turnout, keys still in the ignition, doors locked, map on the seat. That's when they called in Rescue Unit 9, a volunteer SAR team made up of 6 seasoned locals who'd all done dozens of wilderness recoveries. Their names were Terry Nolan, 42, team leader, ex-Army medic; Kurt and Elena Marshall, a husband and wife duo, both seasoned climbers; Miguel Alvarez, 27, communications tech; Bethany Cole, 33, emergency nurse; Doc Price, 61, geologist and environmental guide. They were experienced, trained, disciplined, not the kind of people to wander off course. On October 3rd, Rescue Unit 9 set out from the ranger station at Cantwell. Their radio check-ins were scheduled every 6 hours. For the first 2 days, everything was routine. They hiked about 20 miles northeast, covering an area dense with pine and permafrost. Weather was mild for Alaska, just light snow and steady winds. Then, on the morning of October 5th, they made their final transmission. The recording was later recovered from the ranger station's main log. 08:17 a.m. Cantwell Base, this is Unit 9. We're approaching grid 14D. Visibility's dropping fast, possible fog forming over the ridge. Then a pause. Hold on. We're hearing something on channel 4. Sounds like static. Then, like someone calling for help. Another voice, faint, but clear enough to be heard on the tape. It's Daniel. I think it's him. That was the last thing they ever said. 2 days later, a state trooper hopper flew over the grid area. No sign of the team. Their last GPS ping showed them about 15 miles north of the search boundary, deep inside a section of the park known as the Witches Valley, named by locals for its erratic fog and optical illusions. In the pilot's report, he wrote, "Fog layer appears unusually dense, visual range less than 20 meters. Instruments briefly misaligned when approaching target zone, compass spinning." For the next 2 weeks, the Park Service launched the largest land search in Denali's history. They found the rescue team's base camp, tents intact, food stored, gear neatly stacked. But there were 6 sets of boot prints leading north, into the fog. No prints returning. When they followed the trails, the side ops stopped abruptly at a dry riverbed. It was like all six had just vanished mid-step. Now, here's where it gets strange. 3 months later, a hunter named Reed Tanner stumbled across a rusted metal case about 12 miles east of that same dry bed. Inside were a damaged handheld radio, a cracked GPS, and a waterproof notebook, all stamped with the emblem of Rescue Unit 9. The notebook belonged to Miguel Alvarez, the team's radio operator. Most of the entries were normal: coordinates, weather, terrain notes, until the last 2 pages. Heard voice again near dusk. Sounded close this time. Elena swears it called her name. We switched channels. Signal still there. Base confirmed. No transmissions. Voice repeating now. Always same phrase. Help me. Terry thinks it's Daniel. Doc says it's coming from below ground. Below ground. Investigators scoured the area where the box was found. There was no cave system, no sinkhole, no evidence of a drop or tunnel. But the GPS data showed something impossible. The last coordinates logged by Miguel were over 600 feet below sea level, in the middle of a mountain. By 2004, the case went cold. Families held memorials. Their names were etched onto a plaque at the ranger station. But there's one final part of this story that never made it into the reports. Something a retired ranger named Daryl Kemp confessed to in a recorded interview 10 years later. He was on duty the night of October 7th, 2 days after the team's last transmission. He said he was alone in the communications office when the emergency channel activated by itself. No one was on shift. No one should have been transmitting. But he heard them. He said 6 voices, faint, distorted, overlapping, were all speaking at once, repeating the same 3 words. Help me out. He logged the time, 3:32 a.m. When investigators later checked, that exact timestamp matched the moment of the final radio transmission, down to the second. The recording still exists, archived, though never released to the public. Ranger Kemp said it was unlike anything he'd ever heard. Voices layered over static, echoing in a pattern that didn't match any radio interference. He said if you slowed it down, the voices weren't calling for help anymore. They were saying, "We helped him out." The bodies of Rescue Unit 9 have never been found. But in 2019, hikers reported hearing distant shouting in that same valley, the same message on repeat, "Help me out." And park rangers noted the transmission came from a frequency that hasn't been used since 2003. They say a house can hold memories, laughter, arguments, and sometimes echoes that don't fade when the people are gone. But what do you do when a house remembers too much? Between 1998 and 2004, a single vacant home in Southbridge, Massachusetts, made over 30 emergency calls to 911. No one ever lived there. No one ever saw anyone go in or out. Yet every call was logged. Everyone answered, and every time, dispatchers heard the same thing: breathing, footsteps, and once a whisper that said, "Don't hang up." The first incident happened on February 3rd, 1998, at exactly 3:11 a.m. The dispatcher that night, Carla Jennings, had been on the job for over a decade. She knew prank calls. She knew drunk dials. She even knew how to handle people who called just to talk. But this one was different. She picked up the line and said her usual, "911, what's your emergency?" There was silence. Then a faint exhale right next to the receiver. Carla thought maybe it was a child hiding under a bed. She spoke calmly, asking if someone was hurt. Then, after about 20 seconds, a sound came through. Not a word, but a slow, uneven shuffle. It was the sound of bare feet on tile. Carla logged the call as unresponsive contact and traced the location to 47 Old Willard Street, an empty Victorian that had been foreclosed 2 years earlier after its owner, a 67-year-old widower named Frank D'Amico, died in his sleep. Officers were sent to check it out. The doors were locked. No lights, no signs of entry. Nothing but a disconnected landline still hanging in the kitchen. That night, they removed the cord from the wall. Problem solved. Or so they thought. 2 months later, it happened again. Same house, same hour. This time, there were 2 calls, back to back. The first lasted 23 seconds. The second, a full minute. Both contained the same sequence: breathing, slow footsteps, and what sounded like the faint crackle of a radio somewhere in the background. But the house had no power. The phone line was disconnected, and the police report from that night notes that the call still registered as active line to residents. By the third incident, the county tech department got involved. They confirmed the number 413-555-0172 was deactivated. Yet when dispatchers ran a trace, it kept pinging back to the same address. And each call came exactly 6 minutes apart. The story caught local attention when Carla Jennings, the same dispatcher, went on record in 2000 saying she'd heard something new on the line. She said the voice was faint, almost buried in static. She transcribed it as best she could. "There's someone in the house." The call was later replayed by techs from the state communications office. They confirmed there were 2 voices on the tape, one belonging to Carla and another overlapping faintly with her own speech, repeating her words in real time. In other words, Carla was talking to herself. After that, the house on Old Willard Street earned a nickname in the department: the Callback House. In 2002, the property was bought by a contractor named Robert Bobby Lang, who planned to renovate and flip it. He spent 3 days cleaning before calling the power company to reconnect service. According to his foreman, that's when the first strange thing happened. When the electrician plugged in a testing lamp, the bulbs in the upstairs hallway flickered, in a pattern: on, off, pause. On, off, pause. It lasted 30 seconds, then stopped. They thought it was faulty wiring, but when the foreman stepped outside to check the meter, he noticed even something stranger. The electric meter wasn't turning. There was no power flow at all. Lang laughed it off at first, but that night he called 911 himself. The recording of that call was entered into evidence after Lang's disappearance. It begins with his voice, panicked, whispering, "I think someone in the house. I can hear the phone ringing, but there's no phone hooked up." You can hear him breathing hard, pacing. Then, in the background, faintly, ring, ring, ring. The dispatcher asks him to stay on the line until police arrive, The last thing Lang says is, "It's coming from upstairs." The line cuts. Police found his truck in the driveway. Inside, his tool belt. Upstairs, a single rotary phone sitting on the hallway floor, the old, cream-colored one from the 1970s, not connected to anything. And lying next to it, his cell phone. Battery dead, but screen frozen on one outgoing number. After Lang's disappearance, the property was sealed for investigation. Phone company engineers dismantled the entire junction box. Not a single active wire remained. They even removed the house from the grid, but the calls didn't stop. Between 2003 and 2004, dispatchers logged 7 more calls, all from the same address. Each time, the recording was identical. Same 3-second delay, same breathing, same faint whisper repeating the dispatcher's words a split second late. Some technicians suggested it was a cross-line echo, the kind that happens when an open circuit feeds back on itself. But there was no open circuit, no lines, no service. In 2005, the department stopped recording those calls publicly. But inside the archives at Worcester County Emergency Services, there's an entry logged on December 24th, 2006, 3:11 a.m., Christmas Eve. That night, former dispatcher Carla Jennings was home, retired, living alone. She kept her old radio scanner near the kitchen window, sometimes listening to chatter from the old district out of nostalgia. Just after 3 a.m., she heard an open line come through on Channel 4, the old 911 frequency. The static cleared, and a voice came through. A woman's voice, soft, measured, tired. And it said, "911, what's your emergency?" Carla froze, because it was her own voice, her exact recording from the first night in 1998. Then another voice followed, quieter, closer to the mic. It said, "There's someone in the house." And the call ended. The next morning, the Worcester County switchboard registered one last call from 47 Old Willard Street. It lasted 12 seconds. The system recorded it automatically. When Tex played it back, it contained no words, just faint breathing, and then the dial tone. But the trace data showed something that shouldn't have been possible. The call hadn't come from Southbridge. It had come from Carla Jennings' home phone line, the one she used that night before she was found dead of cardiac arrest in her living room. She died with the handset still in her hand. The line was still open. And the phone company confirmed her final outgoing call was to her own number. They demolished 47 Old Willard Street the following year, but the lot still carries a phone line registration. Inactive, no billing, no owner. And once every few months, on the 3rd of February at 3:11 a.m., the switchboard still lights up. For a few seconds, it reads it as a single number. No address, no contact. Just 3 words in the dispatch notes, automatically filled in by the system. Call from inside.
If you travel far enough up the coast of Nova Scotia, past the lighthouses and fishing towns, you'll reach a string of rocky islands known as the Cumberland Shoals. They're uninhabited, barren, cold, and whipped by the Atlantic winds. But in the early 1970s, one of those islands had a purpose. It was home to Station 19, a government-operated weather outpost built to monitor coastal storms. 3 men lived there at a time, each serving 4-month rotations. Their job was simple: record weather data, maintain the lighthouse beacon, and transmit hourly updates to the mainland. There was no phone line, no TV, no radio other than the one connected to Halifax Command. The last recorded transmission from Station 19 was made on January 12, 1972 at 2:47 a.m. After that, silence. When a supply boat arrived 2 days later, the island was deserted. No struggle, no signs of evacuation. The logbooks were still open, coffee cups half full, chairs tucked neatly under the table. It looked like the men had just stepped out for a moment and never came back. For decades, the disappearance of Station 19's crew was an obscure maritime mystery, barely a footnote in Canadian archives. But in 2013, a historian named Dr. Stephen Morris uncovered something unusual while digitizing old weather logs. He found a box labeled Confidential Audio Logs 1971-2002. Inside were 6 reel-to-reel tapes, each labeled Station 19. The recordings had never been cataloged. When he played them, what he heard didn't sound like weather reports at all. They were conversations, distorted, distant, like they'd been recorded through layers of static and time. The first tape, dated November 9, 1971, begins with the sound of wind and seagulls. Then a man's voice, calm and professional. Weather observation, Station 19. Conditions stable. Winds at 20 knots east by southeast. That was Chief Operator Leonard Price, 38 years old, a former radio technician with the Royal Navy. He's joined by 2 others, Mark O'Donnell, 29, a meteorologist, and Harvey Droll, 45, the maintenance engineer. Their voices are relaxed at first, joking, normal. But on the next tape, recorded 3 weeks later, the tone changes. Mark mentions hearing something strange over the open frequency. Not feedback, not static, a voice buried in the noise. He says, "I heard it twice now. It says numbers, always the same ones. 19, 19, 19. Harvey laughs, calling it a glitch, but Leonard doesn't laugh. He writes something in the logbook, the word echo, underlined twice. By mid-December, the tapes become unsettling. The wind outside howls constantly, sometimes peaking so loud it distorts the microphone. There's a sense of growing unease among the crew. They start arguing about the signal. Mark insists it's a transmission from another station. Leonard says it's repeating their own words seconds before they say them. In one recording, you can hear him testing it. Leonard, Station 19, reading weather pattern at static. The same voice, slightly delayed. Station 19, reading weather pattern at. Then silence. You can hear Leonard breathing heavily. He says quietly, "That wasn't playback. The recorder's off." The fourth tape is nearly unlistenable. There's banging, equipment moving, someone yelling off mic. Then a door slams. The log timestamp is December 31st, 1971, New Year's Eve. Leonard's voice returns after several minutes. Mark's gone outside. He says he saw a light in the fog. I told him it's a reflection, but he swears it was moving. I'm writing this down. The signal's louder now. We hear ourselves hours before we speak. It's not feedback, it's ahead of us. The recording ends abruptly.
When the 5th tape begins, only Leonard and Harvey are still there. They sound exhausted, paranoid. The storm hasn't stopped in days. Harvey mutters that the generator keeps shutting off by itself, though it's not low on fuel. Leonard says he's been keeping the radio off at night, but it turns itself back on, always to the same frequency.
and every time it plays back their own voices. Not from the past, from the future. "I heard us arguing," Leonard says, voice shaking. "I heard myself say something before I said it. But when I did, the power went out. I think whatever's broadcasting us, it's getting closer." At this point, Dr. Maris noted something chilling. Between each tape, there's an unexplained jump in background noise, a faint humming, like an engine buried under the sound of the wind. When slowed down digitally, the hum forms a rhythm, a repeating pattern of 19 beats. The final tape is dated January 12th, 1972, the night of their disappearance. It's the longest, 42 minutes. The first 10 minutes are empty, just wind and static. Then Leonard's voice returns. He sounds calm, eerily calm. "This is Station 19. If anyone's hearing this, we've lost visibility. We've sealed the doors. The signal's clear now. It's asking us to respond." There's a pause. Then the faint sound of a second voice, not one of the crew. It's slower, distorted, but the words are recognizable. "Repeat. Station 19. Leonard whispers, "It's us." You hear Harvey in the background shouting, "Turn it off! For God's sake, turn it off!" Then something slams against the door. 3 heavy bangs. Leonard says, "We're not alone out here." The tape distorts again. And then, faintly, underneath the chaos, a new voice, clear, mechanical, layered with echo. It says, "Transmission received. We are reading you from 19 years ahead." Dr. Maris turned the recordings over to the Canadian Coast Guard. They authenticated the tapes, but found no explanation. The electromagnetic data embedded in the recording matched an unknown frequency, one that wasn't registered in 1972. But there's more. During testing, the lab noted intermittent pulses still emanating from the original reels. Every 19 seconds, the magnetic strip emitted a tiny burst of energy, as if something was still broadcasting from it. Then came the strangest part of all. 2 months after the tapes were discovered, a routine weather station in modern Halifax picked up a rogue transmission on their automated receiver. It came from open waters, roughly the same coordinates as the old Cumberland Shoals, and it contained a short burst of Morse code. When decoded, it read, "Station 19 active, awaiting acknowledgement." No such station exists. The lighthouse is long gone. The islands eroded to almost nothing. But the transmission came again exactly 19 days later, and this time it wasn't Morse code. It was Leonard Price's voice, still calm, still repeating the same message he sent 53 years ago. "This is Station 19. Conditions stable. Winds at 20 knots east by southeast." And then, faintly, at the end of the recording, another voice whispered, "Transmission received." There's a small coastal town in Oregon called Tillamook Bay, a quiet place of salt, fog, and long gray mornings. It's the kind of town where everyone knows everyone, and where time seems to move slower than anywhere else. That's where Alan Brooks lived, and where in 1994 he lost his wife. Alan was a photographer, a modest one. He took wedding photos, tourist postcards, local newspaper assignments. He wasn't famous, but he had a steady eye for detail. His wife Claire was his favorite subject. They met when she came into his shop to develop film, a roll of black and white beach photos. He said she had a face made for soft light. Within a year, they were married. For the next 5 years, they lived quietly in a cedar cabin overlooking the ocean. Then one night in March, Claire took her car out for a short drive to the store. It was raining heavily. A truck skidded on the slick road and hit her head-on. She died instantly. Alan was inconsolable. He stopped taking jobs, stopped going into town, and for weeks barely left the house. He told a neighbor later that the only thing that kept him sane was sorting through her old photographs, rolls of undeveloped films she'd left in a drawer. He wanted to feel close to her again, to see the world the way she'd seen it.
The first 2 rolls were normal. Family shots, beaches, their old cat. But when he developed the third, something strange appeared. Among the photos of cliffs and waves, there was one that stopped him cold. It showed Claire, standing at the edge of the bay, alive, smiling, and wearing the blue raincoat she died in. At first, Alan thought it was an old picture he'd taken himself, one he'd forgotten. But when he looked closer, he saw something impossible. In the background, beyond her shoulder, he could see himself, standing on the rocks, camera raised, taking the picture. Except he had never been there. He was home that day, according to his own diary. He'd been home waiting for her to come back from the store. Alan tried to dismiss it as grief playing tricks on him. He told himself maybe Claire had set the camera on a timer, but he couldn't explain the second photo. It appeared 3 frames later, same shoreline, same lighting, but Claire was gone. Only her footprints remained, leading straight into the ocean. And in the next photo, those prints had vanished. Over the next few days, Alan developed every remaining roll of film she'd left behind. Each one contained something new, images of places neither of them had ever been. An empty highway lined with snow, a motel room with peeling wallpaper, a field of wind turbines spinning in fog, and in several of them, reflected faintly in windows or puddles, he could see her face, not posing, just there, watching. Alan became obsessed. He mapped out the locations as best he could, driving for days up and down the coast, trying to match the photos to real places. Every so often, he'd find one, and always something would be waiting. A half-buried camera lens, a crushed roll of undeveloped film. Once, a photograph pinned to a tree with his name scrawled on the back.
By summer, Alan's neighbors stopped seeing him altogether. He stopped paying bills, answering calls. The sheriff eventually checked on him after his sister reported him missing. Inside the cabin, everything was neat and quiet. A pot of coffee sat on the counter. In his dark room, dozens of prints covered the walls, but none of them were new. They were the same photos of Claire, only now she wasn't smiling. She looked older, her face drawn. And in the last few prints, Alan could be seen standing beside her, holding her hand. But he hadn't been alive to take them. The coroner estimated he'd been dead for at least a week before he was found, collapsed near the sink, a camera strap still around his neck. The final roll in the camera was half shot. The negatives showed the inside of the house, kitchen, hallway, and bedroom. Then, in the final frame, a reflection in the mirror. Not Alan, not Claire, someone else. Blurred by motion, holding a camera and taking his picture. After his death, the photos were boxed up and stored as evidence. Years later, they were transferred to a university archive for study, the Brooks Collection, labeled simply as local history. But according to the archivist who cataloged them, one envelope kept reappearing after being filed away, the one containing the photograph of Claire in the blue raincoat. He said it always seemed to find its way to the top of the pile, even after he locked it away. When the university digitized the photos, one technician swore he saw something move in the image. In the corner of the frame, along the rocks, the figure of Alan, barely visible, now turned slightly toward the camera. And in the reflection on the water behind him, a second shape standing closer, smaller, wearing a blue raincoat. To this day, the photograph is stored in a humidity-controlled drawer, but when viewed under a magnifying glass, there's an inscription etched faintly into the negative, something Alan never could have written himself. It reads, "Developed in both worlds."
If you've made it this far, you've probably realized something. The scariest stories aren't about ghosts or curses or things hiding under the bed. They're about what we don't understand, the moments when logic stops working and the world feels just slightly off. If you enjoyed tonight's story, go ahead and like this video. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, subscribe. There are more stories waiting, and some of them are still happening. Sleep well, if you can.